We've all been lied to. Sometimes we know someone's lying to us. Other times we have the feeling we're being lied to. The feeling's uncomfortable, especially when we're being lied to by someone close to us. Lies can have huge personal and financial consequences. So how can we detect lies? How can we get better at recognizing lies before we suffer the consequences of believing them? A powerful and effective way is to study people's grammar and syntax in order to detect anomalies. This is the mission of statement analysis. This method focuses on anomalies, unreliable language. The premise is simple. People say what's on their mind, what's really on their mind, but what they may be trying to conceal. This video explains some of the key areas of the method. You'll learn some of the major signs that someone's withholding or fabricating information. Please hit the like button. Also, leave a comment to let people know which lies you've noticed in your own life, or whatever else on your mind. If you're new, welcome to the channel. Subscribe for more videos about language use. Language consists of different speech actions, greetings, questions, assessments, and so on. These actions govern every interaction we have. There are also accounts. An account is when someone's asked to tell or describe something they've experienced, felt, seen, or heard. In police investigations, suspects are asked to account for their whereabouts around the time of the crime, and witnesses are asked in more detail in order to test the validity of their claims. Statement analysis has a particular interest in accounts. No matter if we're trying to determine the validity of a suspect's claims, a sales pitch, or the incredible story that a colleague tells us. The first area we're interested in is equivocation. Equivocation's when someone uses weak modifiers and vague expressions expressing uncertainty rather than certainty. Let's say you ask your colleague where he was last night, and he answers, "I was sort of out with my friends." Sort of is hedging language and points to other circumstances than just being out with his friends. Same thing if he'd said, "Mainly I was out with my friends." Mainly points to other activity. For the person speaking, the good thing about this is that he or she can retract their statement at a later point without directly contradicting said statement. Because if other activity is revealed, they can simply say, "Well, I told you, I was mainly out with my friends," and they wouldn't be completely wrong. Other equivocating expressions include verbs like think, guess, and assume, and adverbs like almost, about, and basically. Look out for equivocation. Someone may not be telling you the whole truth. Lack of self-reference is another key area. Truthful people are more likely to make frequent use of the personal pronoun I. This shows agency, taking responsibility for the action they're describing. Deceptive people are more likely to skip the personal pronoun and go straight to the verb. This way, they're not linguistically responsible for the action they're describing. So, you're upset that your friend forgot your appointment, and you ask him to account for what he did instead, and he gives you this answer. "I completely forgot. I was working late. After work, I drove by my parents and stayed for supper. I was so tired that I didn't even check my calendar." But your friend could also give you this answer. "I completely forgot, worked late, drove by my parents, and stayed for supper." You know when you're so tired that you don't even check your calendar. In the first sentences, we observe a pronoun omission. In the last sentence, you has replaced I, and the possessive pronoun your has replaced my. This also reduces self-reference. Another way to reduce self-reference is to make use of passive voice. Instead of "I didn't check my calendar," the same person could say, "The calendar wasn't checked," which removes agency and hence accountability. Sometimes we observe a self-reference in form of a personal pronoun. However, the subject shifts from I to we and vice versa for self-interest. Consider the following example. Elizabeth Holmes, former chief executive of a health technology company, is asked a confrontational question.
The notion that with a single pinprick you could get blood and do many dozens of blood tests at one time at a much lower cost was compelling. So it was kind of a shock to us to discover a few weeks ago that you're really only doing one test with that pinprick. Do you think the hype, did we both let the hype get ahead of the story if you're only doing one test?
I'm an engineer, and we've tried to approach this the way we approach everything, which is understanding, what was written, what's accurate, what's not accurate, and how did it happen. And so we went through these in detail, and we've seen that much of what has been written is not accurate. And so we've asked ourselves, what did we do to get into this kind of place in which we're reading this kind of stuff all over the national media? And what we've concluded from that is that we need to do a better job of communicating, and we want to be the best at that. I mean, as you can tell from this coverage, I'm definitely not a PR person.
Holmes uses the personal pronoun I, but then shifts to the collective personal pronoun we in the same sentence and for the rest of her answer, with one exception. This is called an institutional we, one person speaking on behalf of the company. And it's also association. Most often, association works like a light switch. The subject shifts from I to we and vice versa when it's convenient. So, with the pronoun I, it's important to her to emphasize her alleged personal skills, being an engineer, which we know she's not. However, it's convenient for her to shift to we when she mentions the critical questions they allegedly ask themselves. She doesn't say, "What did I do to get into this kind of place?" but "What did we do to get into this kind of place?" Linguistically, this is shared responsibility. So even when there's a grammatical subject, there's still reason to be critical. Narrative balance is another area of interest. A narrative consists of a prologue, a critical event, and an aftermath. The prologue sets the scene for the critical event. Typically, we're introduced to characters, time, and location. The critical event's the most important part, describing how the events unfolded. We expect it to be detailed. The aftermath is the shorter part, describing what happened after the critical event. In an interview about TV preferences, I once asked a viewer if she learned anything personally from watching a reality show about people in deep financial trouble. She gave me this answer. "I have a friend who's in financial trouble. A while ago, I helped her manage her bills." This is the prologue. Two characters are introduced, the viewer and her friend, and the main problems briefly introduced, helping her friend manage her bills. She continues with the critical event. Just like the participants in that show, she also didn't look at her bills. And then we sat down and had a look at the letters she had received, and I told her, "You can just call them and ask to have your bills put on hold." And she said, "What? You can do that?" And I said, "Of course, it's no problem at all." She ends the narrative with this aftermath. "Today, my friend owes about half the money she once did. She's happy I took the time to sit down with her." In this example, there's a typical balance between the three parts. When the critical event's very short, it could point to deception. Truthful people speak from long-term memory because they've actually experienced the things they're describing. Deceptive people don't speak solely from long-term memory, so they struggle to give details or they avoid them overall. Consider the following example with Amanda, who claims to have had a brief affair with Chris Watts before he was arrested and sentenced. The detective asks her to describe their alleged meeting, and Amanda starts with this prologue.
And it's around the February, March time period. They're announcing a divorce, and my kids are in Vermont, and so I just kind of went wild.
You said that the Chick-fil-A.
Mm-hmm.
Did you both drive there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what was he driving?
He was driving a truck.
It was just a pickup? Anything specific about it or unique about it?
Mm-hmm. As I remember. And then I remember just kind of...
By the way, notice Amanda's use of the verb remember. Mentioning this verb gives her leeway to remember what she feels like describing and leave out the rest. Now that the scene's set, she's supposed to tell the critical event, but notice what happens.
I got something to drink, and then we just it was so humiliating for me, because the meetup was just about, so we kind of just went and, met him somewhere, and I know it wasn't I know it's kind of funny now, but it's the killer, and, no radars went off or anything, and so then it's just scary, I had this guy in my home.
She stops the description of the critical event after saying she got something to drink. After this, she's supposedly too embarrassed to tell what allegedly happened. Then she refers to the general nature of the alleged meeting.
The meetup was just about...
And she quickly ends with the aftermath.
I know it's kind of funny now, but it's the killer, and so then it's just scary, I had this guy in my home.
Overall, Amanda's narrative is unreliable. Also look for narrative balance in other situations where someone claims something happened. It could be a married couple claiming they saw a thief leave their house with jewelry. We came home from the movies. It wasn't completely dark. We parked the car in the garage, got out and shut the doors. We walked up to the front door. We saw a man running with the jewelry. Then we got in and called the police. Here, the prologue's 4 sentences long. There's only one sentence with the critical event before the aftermath sets in. There are no details of what the man looked like or what the couple felt or did when they allegedly saw him running. This lack of narrative balance makes it relevant to consider that the couple's not telling the truth. Investigators should look into possible insurance fraud. Truthful people are more likely to describe events in past tense. That's because the minds correctly label these events as completed. Deceptive people are more likely to rehearse the events in their minds because the events aren't real and completed. When rehearsing, these people make frequent use of present tense. Dramatic present tense is well known within literature, but in a conversation it's more unusual than past tense. This doesn't mean that every time a person uses present tense, he or she is lying, but it is interesting to note patterns. If your colleague usually describes events in past tense, it's worth noting if she suddenly describes a specific event using present tense. This could point to information that she hopes to be able to conceal or twist and make you believe. Many people have that one family member who always has an incredible story to tell. If he's using present tense, this suggests that he doesn't speak entirely from experiential memory, but that something's been added to the story. This way, the story is likely a little too incredible. Verb tense also matters in other cases, but in a different way. When someone goes missing, we don't expect their relatives to use past tense about them. Past tense verbs point to closure and hence possible knowledge of what's happened to the missing person. Verb tense has an incriminating potential. If your friend got fired from his job but won't admit it to you, he might slip up at one point and say, "I had such a nice time there," and not, "I have such a nice time there." Verb tense can be very revealing and is definitely something to look for and also look out for. Lying is stressful, so before telling a lie, even deceptive people will often answer with a question.
But I just want to make sure it's not that you don't remember whether the Indiana hospital room incident occurred. It affirmatively did not take place.
No, it didn't. How could it have taken place when I've never taken performance-enhancing drugs?
Okay.
How could that have happened?
That was...
How many times do I have to say it?
When accused of stealing, the thief might respond, "Why would I want to steal something with so many people around?" Or when you suspect that your partner has taken 3 scoops of ice instead of 2, he might respond, "Do you really think that low of me?" Answering with a question is all about reverse psychology, all about making the good guys look dumb, crazy, or insensitive, while making the bad guys look smart, sane, and sensitive. It can also be used for stalling. In 911 calls where the callers actually committed the crime, the callers will frequently ask to the dispatchers questions, pretending not to hear them. This gives them more time to think about what to say. These were 5 telltale signs that someone could be lying to you. If you liked the video, please be sure to press the like button and make a comment. Please subscribe for more video updates. Thanks for your time.
There's no reason to panic. Now, it is true that one of the crew members is ill. Slightly ill. But the other 2 pilots are just fine. They're at the controls flying the plane.